It was late at night. I sat in a quiet, dimly lit room, watching over my little brother, Adrian. He was sick, fighting a fever that had left him weak and restless. I should have been focused on him, but I wasn't. Instead, I was glued to my phone, caught up in a mobile game. The glow of the screen, the intensity of the game, swallowed up all my attention. When the game finally ended, I tossed my phone aside and looked over at Adrian. That's when my stomach dropped. Adrian wasn't in bed anymore. Instead, he was at the door, his small figure silhouetted against the wood, his tiny hands fumbling with the latch, as though he were trying to leave. Sleepwalking again, I muttered to myself as I stood up. I tried to sound firm, raising my voice. "Where do you think you're going at this time of night, Adrian?" He didn't even turn to look at me. He just said, in the softest, weakest voice, "I want to pee." I felt bad for snapping. He was just a sick little kid, after all. So I walked over, lowered my voice, and said gently, "All right, let me come with you." I unlatched the door, and together we stepped out into the night. The silence was unsettling. No insects, no wind, just the sound of our footsteps. I let him do his business, and even relieved myself while I waited. Then I reached for his hand, cold and fragile, in mine hand. We walked back toward the house, but the second we reached the doorway, my entire body froze, because inside the room, tucked under his blanket, was Adrian, fast asleep. I stared in shock. My brother hadn't moved. He had been in bed the whole time. Slowly, I looked down at my hand. The hand I thought I was holding was gone. There was nothing there, just empty air. My chest tightened. My blood turned to ice. If Adrian was asleep this whole time, then who did I take outside, and whose hand was I holding? That night, I realized something I'll never forget. It's times when you reach out in the dark, something else is reaching back. In his first year of engineering, Richard was already struggling. Born with a weak heart, every day felt like a balancing act. He stayed in a boys' dormitory in Ravenswood College, sharing his room with 3 other students. Right next to their dorm stood a girls' hostel run by the same landlord. One evening, Richard suddenly collapsed with a heart attack. His friends panicked and called the warden, who rushed in and immediately dialed for an ambulance. As the paramedics helped him out, something caught Richard's eye. On the rooftop of the girls' hostel, a girl was standing at the edge, perfectly still. Her hair was wild in the wind, her eyes fixed on the darkness below. Before Richard could even process what he was seeing, she leaned forward, ready to jump. His voice cracked as he whispered to the warden, "Stop the ambulance, look up there." The warden turned just in time to see her step into the air. Richard watched helplessly as the girl's body crashed to the ground with a sickening thud. The warden sprinted to her broken figure and, in desperation, carried her into the same ambulance. Her head was bleeding, her legs bent unnaturally, her breaths shallow and ragged. For a moment, Richard forgot about his own pain. All he could see was her face, trembling, fighting for life. They sped to the hospital. News spread fast, and by the time they arrived, other students had gathered. When she regained consciousness briefly, doctors prepared to transfer her to a larger hospital. But she pulled off her oxygen mask and whispered through her tears, "Leave me alone." Hours later, word reached the dorm. The girl had died on the way. Richard tried to push the memory away, but it clung to him like a shadow. By the next night, the entire dorm was on edge. Nobody dared to walk the halls alone. Whispers spread like wildfire claims that her spirit was roaming the corridors. At first, Richard dismissed them until it happened. It was around 1 a.m. His roommates had all left the lights on, trying to sleep through their fear. Arjun lay in his bed, earphones in, music drowning out his thoughts. Just as he was about to drift off, he felt it, a hand on his shoulder. It shook him gently at first, then harder. okay? He assumed it was one of his friends, too scared to go to the bathroom alone. Annoyed, he shouted, "Wake someone else up." But the hand didn't stop. Irritated, he turned around, and his blood ran cold. T wasn't his friend. It was her, the same girl who had jumped from the rooftop. Her face was pale and broken, blood dripping from her hair, her eyes burning into his with a mixture of agony and rage. Richard tried to scream, but no sound came out, his body locked in terror. The girl's hands closed around his throat, squeezing tighter and tighter. Her blood dripped onto his chest as she strangled him, her face inches from his own. Desperate, he kicked at his roommate's bed, but none of them stirred. It was as if they couldn't hear him, or were pretending to sleep. He clawed at her hands, choking, his vision blurring. Every time he shut his eyes, her face was still there, burned into his mind, inescapable. Just when he thought he would die, his foot knocked over a glass under the bed. The sharp sound jolted his roommates awake. They rushed to him, seeing only Arjun thrashing, crying, drenched in sweat. To them, he looked like he was having another heart attack. But Richard knew the truth. Even as his friends tried to calm him, her hands were still around his neck. Then, as the dorm warden burst through the door, she vanished, slipping silently out through the doorway like smoke. Richard gasped for air, his eyes wide with terror. He told the warden everything. No one in that room slept the rest of the night. By morning, Richard had made up his mind. He called his parents and begged them to take him home. He dropped out of Ravenswood College immediately. He never returned, not even to collect his transfer certificate. And as for the girl, he never learned her name, but her face, her broken, bloodied face, never left him. Say, the girl's spirit still wanders the hallways of Ravenswood, searching for the one who saw her fall. And if you ever feel a hand on your shoulder in the middle of the night, pray it isn't hers. There once was a young woman named Isabella Grant. She worked at a well-known sales firm called Blackwood Corporation. Within months of joining, Isabella's name was everywhere on performance charts, in conversations, even on the employee of the quarter wall. She was smart, hardworking, and her presence lit up every room she walked into. People admired her, and many adored her, but admiration often breeds envy. Some of her colleagues at Blackwood grew jealous. They whispered behind her back, spread rumors, even tried to catch her breaking company rules. Phone calls were monitored. Desperate attempts were made to find fault in her sales tactics, but nothing ever surfaced. She was simply that good. One late evening, her company carpool cab pulled up to the pickup point. Normally, the drivers would wait 5 minutes, sometimes more, if they knew the passenger. That night, the driver waited 15. When Isabella didn't show, a fellow employee named Daniel, who was scheduled to ride the same cab, decided to go fetch her, climbed the steps to her small apartment above an old bakery, smiling at the thought of meeting his friend. He knocked. The door opened, but instead of Isabella, an old woman stood in the doorway. Her expression was unreadable, heavy, and strange, as if the weight of the world pressed down on her shoulders. "Good evening," Daniel began, politely. "The cab's been waiting for over 15 minutes. I'm here to check if Isabella's ready to leave." But his voice faltered. The woman's eyes, they were unlike anything he'd ever seen. Dark, hollow, filled with something unworldly. They seemed to pull the words straight out of his throat. Slowly, she opened the door wider. Behind her, Daniel glimpsed the inside of the apartment, dusty old furniture, cracked tiles, and dim walls stained with time. Then her bony hand lifted, trembling slightly, pointing to a faded photograph on the wall. A photograph draped with a garland of dead flowers. Her voice was low, almost a growl. "She's been dead for 4 years. You're not the first one to knock on my door asking for her, right?" Before Daniel could even breathe, the old woman slammed the door shut. He froze, His feet felt nailed to the floor. Cold washed over his entire body, the realization crawling down his spine like ice water. Then panic overtook him. Daniel turned and bolted down the stairs, nearly tripping, his shoulders slamming into the wall as he stumbled. He reached the waiting cab, yanked the door open, and screamed at the driver, "Go, drive." The cab sped into the night, leaving behind that cursed building. From that moment on, Isabella's existence began to unravel. Her photos disappeared from teen pictures. Her voice recordings erased themselves. Her presence in company logs, chats, even documents gone. It was as if she had never worked at Blackwood at all. But whispers still lingered. Some former employees claimed that Isabella had been betrayed, trapped, and silenced by jealous coworkers who had lured her into an empty office and ended her life. Her body was said to be buried in the forgotten ruins of an abandoned lot nearby. And then came the darkest revelation of all. One curious ex-employee dug deeper. A simple search revealed that Blackwood Corporation's headquarters had been built over an old burial ground. The company never thrived again. Its reputation crumbled, employees fled, and the once busy building now stands abandoned, dark, silent, haunted. Isabella Grant's story was buried along with her body, erased from files, photos, and records as if she had never lived at all. But whispers remain, and some say her spirit still lingers in the ruins of Blackwood Corporation. The building stands silent now, swallowed by shadows. Yet, those who pass by at night claim to see her waiting at the door, as though her cab never came. She was the company's brightest star, and now its darkest curse. And if you ever hear a knock at your office door after hours, pray it isn't Isabella.